Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Lunch and Learn. I'm Brian Swift from the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation. I'm the Public Engagement Coordinator. And today our guest is Shannon Ritter from Keep Pennsylvania Beautiful. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Brian.
So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the litter action plan. But also, I think this is probably a good time if Shannon, you'd like to introduce yourself a little bit, talk about Keep PA Beautiful in case some people don't really know about your organization.
Sure. So my name's Shannon Reiter. I've been with the organization now since 2004. So I've been around, I feel like a long time. I feel like I've grown up here. We started out as PA Cleanways, and in 2009, we actually merged with Keep Pennsylvania Beautiful and became the state affiliate of Keep America Beautiful. Our mission has always been centered around community engagement, community stewardship, particularly focusing on proper waste disposal, litter, and illegal dumping. Our mission is empowering Pennsylvanians to keep our communities clean and beautiful. We have around 30 county or municipal affiliates across the state, and we work with thousands of nonprofit organizations, community groups every year to really do community improvement work, whether it be cleanups or special collections or education. We're really just trying to, empower Pennsylvanians to work in their communities to make it better.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Thank
I love
you.
it. And
yeah, it's a great job.
Yeah. And then, so I guess then today what we're really going to focus on is the litter action plan, which is a relatively new initiative, I believe.
Well, I think new in the sense that it's formalized, right? The litter action plan is really a formalized effort for the state and different stakeholders to pull together to address a problem that's been around a long time. And so in that sense, yeah, it's a new initiative, but the work that's detailed in it and called for has really been underway for a long time. And we've been working to address litter in our state parks and forests and on our roadways, forever. So the litter action plan itself is new, but the work is not. So.
And that's a good point. So actually, what is, as I was reading about the plan, I think one of the lines that really stuck out was that Pennsylvania has a litter problem. It's just like one. I think that if I'm correct.
Yeah, well, we do have a litter problem.
And I want to talk about that because maybe some people don't know.
Yeah. So I think most people, when they're driving along the side of the road, they probably do see litter. And if you look closely, you might see illegal dumping. But Pennsylvania definitely has a litter problem. So and we've been like I said, we've been very focused on addressing that problem for a really long time. But what we didn't have was hard data. So it's one thing to say Pennsylvania has a litter problem. It's a different thing to say that there's over 500 million pieces of litter on Pennsylvania roadways, and that 9 cities in 1 year spent $68.5 million to address litter and proper waste disposal in 1 year. That you get people's attention. Once you actually quantify the problem and frame it, then you can really start looking at developing a plan to address it. So yeah, Pennsylvania has a litter problem, but now we also have a plan to address it, and it's based on the research that we conducted.
And we were talking about this a little bit before in the waiting room, but kind of the difference between the bigger, maybe the bigger eyesore would be dumping, right? You mentioned dumping, but when we talk about kind of the bigger problem, what is the litter that is really kind of impacting, or really causing
the problem? Well, there's the litter and illegal dumping causes a host of problems. They come from different sources. It's important to understand what the sources are. And what the motivation is for the bad behavior that we're looking to change, or sometimes it's accidental behavior that we're trying to change. But both littering and illegal dumping are behaviors, right? But there's different motivations. So understanding those is really important. When it comes to illegal dumping, back in the 2000s, we did a similar effort, and some folks might not remember this, where we mapped out over 6,500 illegal dump sites across the state of Pennsylvania. And we inventoried those sites and we looked at what was in them, where they're at, how much, and set out to quantify that problem and lay out a framework to address some of these issues. Illegal dumping is concentrated piles of trash that doesn't belong where it's at, right? Litter tends to be smaller pieces, 1 or 2 items, whether it's tossed out of a window, blown out of a recycling bin, fast food containers, bottles, cans, cigarette butts. That's more litter. It's more visible than illegal dumping. They both have tremendous negative impacts for the environment and for the communities that they're in. And yeah, again, everything goes downstream. So the litter in our streets eventually does make it out into the ocean. And then a lot of folks are talking about marine debris and plastics in our waterways. We have to stop that at the source, and that source is the litter on the street.
Yeah, for sure. I think before we had mentioned that like the average size of litter was 4 inches, you had said?
Yeah, the majority of litter in Pennsylvania is 4 inches or less. And that's largely comprised of cigarette butts and plastics. So when we think about 4 inches or less, and that's the bulk of it, what are those materials? It's plastic film from, packaging from the convenience stores perhaps, or the bottle caps. The nips from the liquor store, like those are actually an increasing problem as well. Cigarette butts, hands down, are the worst in terms of litter in Pennsylvania, but also nationally. And the thing about cigarette butts is, I think if you talk to smokers, most of them don't consider it litter. And so in that regard, we need to educate smokers that it is indeed litter, right? We can get into the merits of smoking or not and the health hazards and all those things. But most smokers probably wouldn't think to throw a soda can out the window, but yet they flick their cigarette butt. So making that correlation is really important, and you do that through education.
Yeah, of course. I have noticed that when you pull up to a traffic light, you will tend to see accumulations of cigarette butts on the roadway or on the side of the roadway as well.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than pulling into a grocery store parking lot and seeing the car next to you open up their garage or their car door and dumping out their ashtray.
Yeah.
Now, cars don't have ashtrays anymore. So sometimes folks will say, well, if they put ashtrays back in the cars, we wouldn't throw them out the window. So that falls under the infrastructure, right? category of, tools to change behavior. But cigarette butts are a big problem.
Can we talk a little bit more about those categories? Because I thought that kind of goes into how kind of the plan was designed to have
right.
That was very interesting.
So I'm gonna pull everything up so I don't mistake anything. So really the whole plan was built around this behavior change process, which was designed by some really smart social scientists. And Keep America Beautiful has really promoted it in terms of behavior change. And it's really just about what are the motivations for certain behaviors and how do we incentivize or punish or whatever we need to do to get the desired outcome, right? And in our case, we're looking for clean communities, vibrant communities, healthy communities, right? So when we're looking at a process, and I know we were going to talk a little bit about the process that we use to get to litter action plan later, but this is really what it comes down to, is you prioritize the behavior that you want to change. You develop, you do the research, right? You get the facts, right? You figure out, you identify it, you get the facts, you engage everybody, you make a plan, and then you evaluate, right? I mean, it's just like a 5-step process. And it's something that it's very logical. It's very, very logical. What do we want to do? We want to get the facts. We want to engage everybody, make a plan, evaluate. Now, in terms of pressure points for change, tools, right? We're looking at, for litter and illegal dumping and waste, you're looking at infrastructure. We need to look at one of the things we really promote is universal access to convenient, affordable trash disposal and recycling. Give people a convenient, affordable way to dispose or properly manage the materials, and the majority of them will do it, right? For those that won't, right, then you have the enforcement piece, your carrots. You have your carrots, you have your sticks. But then there's also the importance of education, right? And again, we talked about that with the smokers, right? The persuasion piece. And incentivizing folks is important, but just setting expectations. And that's what those ordinances are, right? Like, here's the expectation to maintain clean and beautiful communities, and giving people those expectations in paper are really important.
Yeah. I was actually, and this kind of wanted to mention this before about the education part when we were talking about cigarettes, because something I myself, I used to be a smoker back in the day.
Back a long time ago.
And there is a part that, I think I'm probably guilty of, thinking that these things are biodegradable or something. But actually, something that I did recently through a Leave No Trace training course was that kind of learning about the different types of litter or refuse that people throw on the ground and how long it actually takes for the solid to degrade, but even their components still last even longer than that. Right. But I think for cigarettes, I just had this up because I thought this might be interesting to share some of these things. That I think is it 2 years or 2 to 5 years for one cigarette butt to degrade?
I think depending on what you read, I've seen them up to 10 years, but yeah, 2 to 5 years. But the chemicals, right, that leach from them, I mean, it's not like, not all cigarettes or cigarette butts are 100% cotton, Yeah. So cigarette butts, I think plastic is probably something that everybody can really relate to as well, because it's such a key component of so many of the goods, right, that we rely on. And it's also very prominent in terms of, it just lasts forever, right? I mean, we're starting to find the plastics in humans, tracking plastics in our waterways, those microplastics came from somewhere, right? So that proper disposal of plastics and handling of plastics and reduction in use of plastics, those are really, really important things to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. So then let's talk a little bit more. I know you talked about kind of the behavioral change, the behavioral points that we're looking at. But we at the beginning we had also kind of talked about how the litter action plan arose.
Right.
The process. So
this is how we got here, right? We followed that process that we talked about earlier. One day, a woman in the communications department of PennDOT and I were having lunch. I think this was back in 2017. And we were talking about promotion of Pick Up Pennsylvania, which is our community stewardship cleanup program. And she really wanted to see the state do an anti-litter message. And I said, we have wanted the state to do that for forever. We know a lot of the other states do, but we should be thoughtful about it. And that's where we decided that we were going to make a concerted effort to follow that process. So at the end of the day, we did have a really good campaign, which we just launched. But how it started was, like I said, we had lunch, we talked about it, and we identified the problem. We knew we wanted to talk about litter. So then it was about doing the research. So we, with PennDOT and DEP support, conducted the first large-scale litter survey in Pennsylvania that identified over 500 million pieces of litter and inventoried them. It talked about, the different sources, over 4 inches, under 4 inches, but really got a handle on litter in Pennsylvania. We surveyed state and non-state roads, so we can talk, we can break it out that way, rural and urban. So if you're into statistics, it's an interesting read. But in addition to that, we really felt strongly that to move the needle, we needed to really talk about money. And that's why we also, in a parallel effort, contracted to do the municipal cost study. So we spent about a year recruiting municipalities to participate in the cost study. We secured 9 municipalities to participate, some as small as Scranton, some as large as Philadelphia. And we got them to open their books. And really, we did a deep dive into how much they spend on litter and illegal dumping, prevention, education, and abatement and enforcement. And what we found was that was $68.5 million a year. This was pre-COVID, I do want to say that. on managing waste. The horrible statistic is that less than 1% was on education. All right, so the majority of that, 80% of the total dollar spent was on abatement. Right. That's 80% cleaning up, something that could be prevented, right? So we want to move the needle. That's why we want to talk about prevention. So we did the statistics, and then the next thing was to make a plan. And the state jumped in and really led the creation of the litter action plan. They recruited stakeholders from the education community, the waste hauling industry, the businesses, packaging folks, the nonprofits that are out in the field doing the work to really create this plan. We used 4 different committees. Like I said, it was folks for education, folks for laws and enforcement, corporation, and infrastructure. And that's how the plan is presented, right? What different stakeholders can do along in each of those areas to move the needle on litter. It's pretty exciting. So then just last month in August, we launched PA Fights Dirty. DCED worked with Red House Communications in Pittsburgh to develop Pennsylvania's first anti-litter public messaging campaign, PA Fights Dirty, and we're very excited. It focuses on 4 inches or less, and it really tries to encourage individuals to think about how they're managing items, right, to prevent that accidental litter, because that's what the majority of this is. The 4 inches or less.
Yeah, and let's talk. That's great. Let's talk more about that, the 4 inches or less part, and like what individual-wise, because I know in the plan there's different categories what you're talking about for, you know, state agencies, nonprofits, you know, educators, but what individual people that this accidental litter, what can they do?
Well, I mean, just stash it until you can trash it. I mean, it's really as simple as that, right? I mean, it's just about don't flick your cigarette butt, right? It's common sense. I mean, truly, it's just about putting it in your pocket until you can get to a trash can. Hold on to it a little bit longer. You know, when you get to the grocery store, if the receipt flies out the door, right? I mean, just grab it. You know, yeah. But also, you know, cut down on the waste. You know, like we have to start looking at waste reduction, and I think we are. I think there is a big movement to talk about waste reduction. And we need to continue on that route, right? We need to use less single-use plastics. We don't need a grocery bag when we go to the store if we have our reusable bags. Or I know I always take boxes just because it's easier, frankly, to move everything around. But there's tons of little individual things that we can do that make a difference. And then, of course, you know, cleaning up, right? Like, I know it's just something we have to do. Cleanups aren't the solution, but they're never going to go away. So, you know, I'd love for them to go away, because then I'd be out of a job and I'd go do something else. You know what I mean? I'd love to not have to clean up, but it's still an important thing that we have to do. But it's important that we shift our resource allocation to also really focus on prevention.
Of course, yes, yeah. Education definitely. And yeah, well, with cleanups, there are plenty of opportunities to get involved.
Yeah.
In cleanup.
Yeah. So Pennsylvania, or Keep Pennsylvania Beautiful, has the Pick Up Pennsylvania program, and it really it runs all year, but in the spring and the fall, it has you get tools. Basically. So in the spring, if you register with Keep Pennsylvania Beautiful for Pick Up Pennsylvania, you'll have access to free reduced disposal in April. You'll have access to cleanup supplies, bags, gloves, and vests for registered events. In the fall, through Pick Up Pennsylvania, again, it's September through November. We also provide cleanup supplies. We do not have, we can't provide access to free reduced disposal, but we do offer supplies to registered events. And then, of course, we're thrilled to partner with the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation and PRPS on Healthy Lands Week to really promote Stewardship, just general stewardship of the public lands that we really care about. And this isn't just for state parks and state forests, it's for the community park as well. And it goes well beyond cleanups. We want to talk about the volunteers that actually take care of these communities, that are the stewards. We want to celebrate them. So Healthy Lands Week is an exciting time for us to partner with our agencies and our partner agencies and really drive home the importance of public lands. And I encourage folks to go ahead and register an event. And if they need the cleanup supplies, we'll have them. We'll get them to you.
Yeah, Healthy Lands Week is starting very soon. It's starting this weekend, right? September 24th.
Right, yeah, it's this weekend, September 24th through October 2nd. So that's Healthy Lands Week. Pickup Pennsylvania runs September 1st through November 30th in the fall. So if folks do a cleanup, or, you know, if they need supplies for their events outside of the Healthy Lands Week window, they can still get those supplies through us.
And those events, for example, for Pickup Pennsylvania, are they usually focused around roadways, or are they also, can they be?
They're everything and anything. So Pickup Pennsylvania has really become I think it's a powerful program. It engages tens of thousands of volunteers every year in everything from community education to road cleanups to community revitalization to park cleanups. I mean, everything and anything, graffiti removal, anything that really improves the community. It's a community improvement program. So like I said, tens of thousands of volunteers every year, millions and millions of pounds of trash every year. It's really impressive how it's grown, and we're really grateful for all the support from the state and from the local organizations that have come to really rely on this as a way to mobilize in their community.
Yeah, no, I think kind of the pride people take in their homes sometimes with these, like participating in these cleanup programs, is it's amazing.
Yeah,
but also I think, you know, there's, like you said, there's the cleanup programs and there's also prevention. And I think also that same kind of pride in your home and love of your home goes both ways. For sure.
Absolutely. And there's something to say for peer pressure, right? Yeah. So if folks see people taking good care of the places they care about, they're less likely to, you know, trash them.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so.
Yeah, so even the smallest action of running after the receipt that's blowing in the wind passes it on down the line in the future.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So I think you know, litter seems like such an easy issue, right? It's just, but there's actually a lot of pieces to it, and I think that's one of the beauties of the plan is it really delves deep into the infrastructure and what does convenient and affordable access really look like, and how is that brought about in communities? Enforcement, I think enforcement is fascinating because a lot of folks will say, oh, we just need, you know, higher fines. I assure you, higher fines are not going to solve the litter issue, right? And education, like what tools are out there, right, for education. So we are hosting a litter summit in November in the city of Lancaster at the Holiday Inn, November 1st and 2nd. And we're going to really delve into these issues and talk about policies and programs that are underway. I think one of the most exciting topics for me is the enforcement piece of this, because it's very challenging and it's very interesting. But what we did this past year is we commissioned a study with Cecile Carson that took 5 years worth of enforcement, litter, and illegal dumping data in Pennsylvania to really analyze that data and see what are the trends. Does higher fines correlate into increased enforcement and less littering? We also, in addition to taking that 5 years worth of data, we also interviewed, I want to say 12 to 15 enforcement agents and judges as well, magisterial district justices, on their take on enforcement and litter fines and illegal dumping fines. And we're going to be releasing those recommendations probably in October at a high level, but we're going to be doing a deep dive at the Litter Summit to really talk about it. And we're going to probably make some policy recommendations, on ways we could strengthen our litter and illegal dumping laws. So that's going to be pretty exciting too. That's the one thing everybody wants to talk about every time a new session rolls around is we should increase litter fines. And I might make the case for that. That might not be necessary.
Huh.
So,
yeah, it's interesting. I find, for me, the infrastructure is very interesting.
Oh, I love infrastructure.
Yeah, I find, and the way that providing people, the way you phrased it was very, very good. It's
universal access to convenient and affordable trash disposal and recycling. If I had a tattoo, that's what it would say. But I'm happy to share, right? We've done a lot of work on that front, and the state will be announcing, I mean, this has been in the works for some time, but some rule changes to the way waste is managed in rural Pennsylvania, and rural transfer stations will now be will be permitted, and that should provide more waste disposal options in rural Pennsylvania. Because if you think about it, and I don't know where you live, but not everybody has curbside, right? Not everybody can just take their trash out on Monday night and it's gone Tuesday morning. They actually have to take it themselves or hire somebody. And when we did our illegal dumping research, we identified that as a real challenge. But in rural Pennsylvania right now, you can't have these drop-off places for trash. You can have them for recycling, but not for trash. So we worked really hard to work with DEP to get those rules changed to provide that access, and we're really happy to share that.
That's great.
Hopefully will be released this fall.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds like a big achievement for sure.
I will tell you, I feel like I've spent since 2014 singularly focused on that. I mean, it hasn't been singularly focused, but rural transfer stations has been like a way of life for us. We've been working and working and working on that one. So it is. We're pretty excited. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we're kind of getting close to the end here. So I don't know, I guess any closing remarks or closing comments if we'd like to add.
I'd really like to thank PPFF for the opportunity to, talk about litter. And it was nice to meet you, Brian. And I would invite everybody to check out the Litter Summit in November 1st and 2nd. We're going to have an upcycled art exhibit curated by Red Raven, and those sculptures and pieces of art will be for sale. We're having a reception on the 1st. We're doing a walking tour on the 1st as well of the city to look at some convenient, affordable waste disposal options, community compost sites, tiny cans, just a lot of cool stuff going on in the city. And then the summit is on the 2nd. So
yeah, it sounds great. Yeah, and again, thank you for coming on to speak with us as well, Shannon. And I want to invite, because that sounds amazing, but I also want to invite everyone to participate in Healthy Lands Week.
Absolutely.
It's September 24th to October 2nd. There are already a bunch of cleanup activities, other stewardship activities as well that you can take a look at if you go to www.healthylandsweek.org. And yeah. No, again, thank you again, Shannon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you everyone for watching and joining us.
Thanks.